Hi everybody, I'm Todd Bailey with SEOservices.com and welcome again to another exciting episode of Casual Friday. Today I'm joined by Ryan Budenhagen and thank you very much for joining me.
Absolutely, thanks Todd.
Ryan is a great contributor on our blogs and our site related to international SEO and international content. So I'm going to include a link to his author profile, and by all means check out some of his content. He provides some great insights related to ISEO. So let's get right into it. As far as culture and language, they're inherently linked. So, and you write about this a lot in your blogs. So give us one example of how culture impacts internet marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. Culture is huge. You can talk a lot about it in different levels, different degrees. But most importantly, really, when you look at culture, is the characteristics of culture. So that means that you're looking at things, elements of culture that really impact the way people act. So in terms of the characteristics I'll concentrate on here, we're looking at high context culture and low context culture. So it's a big difference that plays out, pretty explicitly. What that means is the way cultures differentiate between meaning, how meaning is received in different cultures. If it is received primarily through literal words and explanations, or if it's used, or if its meaning is perceived primarily through the context of a situation. So in a high context culture, you're going to have more meaning received by individuals through the context of the situation, what day it is, the roles people have. Conversely, if it's a low context culture, you're going to be more concentrated on explanations, examples, definitions, explicit descriptions, essentially. So kind of playing that out online, if you're designing a web page in terms of internet marketing and you're catering to a high context culture, you're going to want to use more explanations about the context of the company and its relationship to the industry it's in, its relationship to its target audiences. Some examples of high context cultures would be Japanese culture, Chinese culture. On the flip side, if you're catering to a low context culture, like Germany, for example, you're going to have more, like I said before, definitions, examples, very explicit content. So there's no question, there's no uncertainty there. Everything is explicitly written out. So those are the kind of two different ways you can do it. So you really want to make sure when you're designing your web page in a new context, you want to make sure you know if it's a high context culture or a low context culture. Those tendencies are very important.
Very good. And can you give us a couple of examples of how language impacts internet marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said before, language and culture are inherently linked and it's hard to differentiate them. But in terms of language, it's really essential for companies, businesses to make sure that the language that their on-site and off-site content is in is the same language that their target audience is in. And keeping in mind that could be two different languages as well, or more. But looking beyond that, keyword research is essential. You really need to have appropriate keyword research. So you want to make sure that, for example, if you have a keyword phrase that you're translating from English to French, for example, you want to make sure that it is the way that the French speakers actually relate to that concept. You don't want to have a situation where you translate that keyword or that keyword phrase and that's actually, that literal translation is not the way that that local culture refers to that concept. So you want to make sure you have an appropriate understanding of the language specific to that context and how those speakers use the language.
Well, those are great insights, and we've touched a lot on language as well as culture. Can you give us more of a global aspect as far as what the search engine market looks like right now?
Definitely. Google, as we all know, is dominant across the board, especially in this country and Europe. In Europe, the numbers are very high. They are, Google's dominance is, their market share is above 90%. So I mean, that's far above what it is globally, a little bit higher than what it is, 92% globally, and here in the US it's about 80%. The rest is made up between, Bing just edging out Yahoo recently. But when you look at different markets, the Russian market, there's a lot of competition, so Google has, depending on what resources you look at, they're going to cite Yandex or Google having 60 or 40% of the market share. That's irrelevant. The point is that Google has very great, fierce competition from Yandex there. They're doing some excellent things with innovative search, with recent news and latest content searching, and also following kind of Google's model, doing more social content searching. If you'd like more information about that, just check out my blog yesterday. talks about Yandex and what they're doing. But looking beyond Russia, the Chinese market, Baidu is huge in China, so they're Google's main competition there. I think they have over 60% market share. So the point really is, although Google is the most dominant, you really want to make sure that you are understanding how the different search engines that are local to that market work. So you're also optimizing for those, as well as Google.
Sure, it's mission critical to understand your target audience as well as the platform that your content is being displayed and searched from. So Baidu, Yandex, certainly important in those regions. Let's touch a little bit on TLDs and country domains. Why don't you talk a little bit about that and the impact related to international SEO?
Yeah, sites with country-coded top-level domains, like a .fr, for example, for France, those are really important because they're associated with a specific country. So you want to make sure, number one, that your target audience is in that specific country. Above and beyond that, you want to make sure that the information on that specific website or the different pages of the website are going to be relevant in terms of keywords to that specific region. So, and if that is the case, then that information is going to rank higher for France location-specific search terms, and also for search queries that originate in France. So you want to make sure that that information is relevant to those markets.
Well, that's excellent. And we touched a little bit on social a little earlier in the conversation. So how can a company address social media within international SEO?
Definitely. Social is huge, as well as culture and language. Everything we're talking about is very important, but social is across cultures. The motto here really is, as for all of international SEO, is to cater to your specific context, whatever context it is, whatever culture you're in, whatever country it is. So here, social media, that's even more important as well. So when you're looking at the social media, you want to it's important for two specific reasons. First, different countries, users in different countries use different platforms. So Twitter and Facebook, we all know, is huge. It's huge internationally. Facebook being the biggest overall social networking site, Twitter being the biggest microblogging site, obviously. So those are used in great numbers across the board internationally. But when you look at certain countries, other secondary and third sort of platforms really start to kind of have bigger competition and bigger usership. So when you look in Europe, you've got 20 in the Spanish market, you've got Skyrock in the French market. Then when you look to Eastern Europe and Russia, you've got Contacta, which has a huge usership and a great amount of members. And then when you look at Holland and Germany, you've got Hives and StudiVZ. So those are, really not as high in terms of Facebook numbers, but there's a great amount of users to them. So you want to make sure that you know, specific to your context, what users are actually using. And secondly, looking at social media, it varies how different users across different cultures engage in social media. So when you look at the US and European markets, 86% of US online adults are engaging in social media. That number is 79% in Europe. And that's great. That's a great stat to have, but even more important is, people are on it, but what's more important is the fact that only 23 to 24% of online Americans and EU users that are on social media are actually creating content. So it's a small percentage of people that are actually creating music, creating blog posts, posting that, creating their own websites, posting that information. So the majority of engagement that's happening, or the majority of participation that's happening in the US and European markets is primarily observation, commenting here and there, and just observing what other people are creating. So it's actually very different in different cultures. So when you look at metro cities in India and China, for example, that number is very different. So over 2/3 of the users there in both those places, will be creating content. So when you're actually looking at engaging the people in the different markets, you want to make sure you understand their behavior. You want to understand how they're actually engaging in the social platform. So if you're in a place where there's mostly creators, then you want to encourage them to create content and submit in that way. Conversely, if you are in a place where people are mostly observing, you probably as an organization want to create compelling content. So they're going to have something to read and be engaged and compelled to seek out your organization for more information further and create better brand awareness essentially over time.
Excellent to understand. Again, regionally for social, how you can incorporate it. If you're an international company looking to get into social, these are some great examples. So Ryan, I appreciate you spending a little time with us today. And again, check out Ryan's blog via the link toward his author profile. I'm Todd Bailey with SEOservices.com, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at SEOservices2012.